Hello my amazing people, and welcome back to my channel. If you're back, if you are new, welcome to my channel. I'm Shayna and I have another case for you all today. Just my usual disclaimer, this is all information that I have found online and compiled into a video for educational purposes. I would like to apologize for being a day late, but such is life. I just wanted to make sure I got out a video as soon as I could, but I realized that I'm a day late, so I apologize for that. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Missy Bevers, and this case has been on my radar for a very long time. It is still an unsolved case, and it's been requested a handful of times from you guys, my subscribers. I've considered covering this case, and then I've kind of circled back time and time again, because if I am being totally transparent, this case freaks me out. Anxiety just has been looming over me since I started doing the research for this case, and I knew from watching videos prior that I was nervous about it because it is very creepy. Making this style of content has caused me to become hypersensitive to my personal safety and surroundings, but also at the same time desensitized to the severity of the content itself, if that makes any sense. So actually watching movies and doing the research on things, it doesn't scare me as much as it used to, but this case is one that does. It has had me feeling like I want to look over my shoulder a little bit more than normal, and it's been a little unsettling. But her story is one that is especially frightening because it could happen to any of us. But without further ado, I would like to thank you so very much for joining me on this wonderful day, and let's go ahead and jump right in. Terry Bevers, who went by the name Missy, was born in August of 1970, and she grew up in Young County, Texas. A friendly and charismatic woman, Missy always made friends with grace, and everyone who knew her loved how sweet and loving and really humble she was, even from a young age. After graduating from high school, Missy went to and graduated from college with her Bachelor of Science in 1995. But after graduating, she wasn't really sure what she wanted to do. So she ended up working some retail jobs for some time before eventually deciding that she did want to go back to school and pursue a career in teaching special education. In the meantime, she also met a man named Brandon Bevers, who she would go on to marry in 1998. The very happy couple would have 3 daughters in the following years, which was Missy's absolute pride and joy. She loved everything about being a mom. She decided to actually fully dedicate her life to motherhood by staying home for some years to raise her girls full time. And she, her 3 girls, and Brandon had a happy and very comfortable life in the area of Red Oak, Texas. In her time as a stay-at-home mom, she had developed a love for fitness that she was extremely passionate about, and she was not your typical casual gym goer like you or I. She was dedicated full-heartedly, and she was really in incredible shape. I mean, at this time in her life, she was 45 years old and looked amazing, and she wanted to combine her love for giving back and working with people with her love of fitness, and she was able to do this by working as a fitness instructor for Camp Gladiator. In this role, she would host a series of fitness classes in various locations where students could come to train and exercise and really focus on their fitness, and Missy had an incredible knack for it. People adored her, and in large part, the attendees of the classes came because she was the teacher, not just because they wanted to go to any fitness class. They could have gone anywhere, but many of her students really enjoyed working with Missy. On April 18th, 2016, Missy had an early morning gladiator class actually scheduled at a church in Midlothian, Texas. This church is called Creekside Church, and class was scheduled to start bright and early at 5 a.m. This area in Texas had been experiencing some pretty bad weather throughout the weekend, so Missy made a point to post on her Facebook page the night before a reminder for her students that class was still on, it was still a go, rain or shine, and she wanted to give them a bit of an encouraging nudge to stay motivated to not sleep in the next day. So she posted, "If it's raining, we're still training. No excuses. You are gladiators." This particular weekend, Missy's husband was out of town on an annual fishing trip in Mississippi. So before going to bed, she left him a very loving voicemail and then just decided to lay down for the night in preparation for her very early morning the very next day. So that next morning, Missy arrived at Creekside Church around 4:20 a.m. She wanted to be there a bit early to prepare for her students' arrival. And she had her primary class that was scheduled to start at 5 a.m. that day, as well as what she called an early bird class. So this started at 4:30. It was kind of for people who wanted to do some extra warm-ups and workouts before the main class at 5. When it comes to gaining access to the church itself, Missy would unlock the door and let herself in, and then when the door would close behind her, it would lock, but there was a mechanism for only churchgoers and Missy students, people who were familiar with the building and who were granted access to the building. There was this mechanism that was located on the outside, which is just a button basically that you have to know where it is, but it was a button outside the main doors of the church. So after Missy let herself in, she could just let the door close behind her, and then her students who knew where this hidden, so to speak, button was could let themselves in as they started to arrive. I think there were 3 early birds supposed to attend, but only one actually did. And this early bird student was a first-time attendee of Missy's classes. So they didn't know about this secret button outside of the church that they were supposed to use to let themselves in, and no one else obviously showed up at the same time as them to tell them about where this button was. So Missy had already arrived at the church at 4:20, and this early bird showed up between 4:20 and 4:30 expecting to start their early bird class. But when they got there, nobody else was there. They didn't see Missy moving around inside, so they decided to just stand under this awning that was outside the church to get out of the rain. And they figured, okay, well, I'll just have to wait until someone shows up to let me in. What other choice do I have? The regular students of Missy's workout class started showing up around 5 a.m. And at that point, all of the normal students, as well as this one early bird, made their way into the church. As they're shuffling in and looking forward to starting off their day with a great workout, they are met with a scene that they never could have prepared for, especially in a place like a church. Their beloved Missy was laying there lifeless. She had very clear head and chest injuries. Frantic and shocked by the discovery, while also unsure if there was still a threat on the premises, a student decided to call the police, and they also took on the task of calling Missy's husband, Brandon, to inform him that she was no longer with them. Police arrived on the scene 10 minutes after receiving the phone call, and thus began an investigation into what would become one of the most sinister mysteries that I personally have seen in a long time. Midlothian is known as an area that is very safe. It's a town that people pass through via a main highway, but it does have a low crime rate. People there generally feel very safe and at ease. And when the community would hear about Missy and what happened to her, it would shake every single resident of this community at their core. Before continuing with my video, I would like to mention a YouTube content creator who goes by the name Arrin Stoner, I believe is how you pronounce his name, and he has created some very detailed videos about what happened to Missy. He has literally spent hundreds of hours analyzing Missy's case, looking at footage and photos, and really working hard to help the police solve this mystery. Some of the photos that I will be using in this video I acquired from his channel. So he has some really great content, extremely informative, to the point, breaks things down in a really digestible way, and does a lot of legwork on his own. So he's really an incredible creator. After clearing the premises for any assailants, police began to examine Missy's body, and they also brought in a canine unit to help sniff and look around for any clues that could be on the scene. Some sources describe Missy's body to be in a very bad condition, while other sources said that her body wasn't as much in a gory state as some sources explained it to be. So that is a bit of this case that is vague. But what police did reveal is that she did have head injuries and chest injuries. But at the point where they were initially examining her remains, they had no idea what object actually caused the injuries. But it definitely had to be a hard and somewhat blunt object that could be used to hit with quite a bit of force. Internal inspection of the church showed broken glass, pried open doors, and some objects out of place. The random damage to the church pointed at the possibility of a burglary or a robbery gone wrong, as though maybe Missy walked in on someone attempting to steal from the church and was then killed as a way of silencing her. But something that was interesting was that whoever did this to Missy didn't steal anything from her person at all. Her cell phone and her wedding ring were both left with her, and that's something you wouldn't really expect if this was actually an attempted robbery or burglary gone wrong. They probably would have taken anything valuable from her as well if the initial reason they were there in the first place was to steal from the church. With no sign of forced entry on the front door, police searched and found that one of the back exits to the church had been broken into. So they knew that whoever did this did not want to exit through the front door. It was very clear to authorities that they had a huge investigation ahead of them. This loving mother with no known enemies found in such an eerie and odd circumstance was perplexing, to say the very least. And they knew that they had to get their hands on surveillance footage from inside and outside of the church immediately in hopes of seeing whatever took place that morning on camera. There were many cameras inside of the church, and given that there was so much damage to the inside of the church, and not severe damage, but like I told you, doors broken into, broken glass, police knew that whoever was inside of the church before Missy arrived had to have been caught on at least one of the cameras. But I'm not sure if they really were prepared to see what they saw light up on their screens as they began sifting through the footage from that day in 2016. At 3:50 a.m., a figure wearing all black emerged for the very first time on the camera footage, and it was clear that they entered through the door that police had already determined was the entry point that was broken into. The figure was wearing what resembled police riot gear from head to toe. They had on a helmet, a vest with various pockets, boots, black cargo pants, the whole getup. Their vest even said police on the front, and they appeared to be carrying a hammer. This hammer would later be determined to be the weapon that was used on Missy. It was a match to the wounds on her body. So of course the question of if this person was a real police officer crossed everyone's mind, but before they could get far enough to actually explore this question, they had to consider some very key things about the mysterious figure walking around on the church footage. This individual was clearly alone. This wasn't an orchestrated burglary plot with multiple people. They walked calmly by all of the cameras and almost the pace of a slow stroll. They appeared to not be heading in any specific direction. They also weren't moving urgently towards an area of the building like they knew where they wanted to go. They would walk around for a bit, maybe attempt to break into a room or two, break some glass, and then they would continue their walk as normal. Something else that's interesting that stood out to the police who were reviewing this footage was the gait of this person walking through the halls. They had a signature walk that was slow, and it featured outward facing feet, kind of like a duck walk, and the right foot of this individual consistently slapped on the ground, kind of in a dragging and placing motion instead of a heel to toe rolling motion that you would typically see in someone walking in a forward direction. This person also leaned onto walls while they were walking as though they were attempting to maintain their balance or like they were in some sort of pain from a physical ailment. They didn't appear to be under the influence of any substance though, just from watching the footage. They weren't stumbling, they were just kind of leaning and reinforcing their weight. Police did initially say that they felt that this individual was a man, but they ended up retracting and saying that they actually couldn't be sure either way. They believed the assailant to be between 5'2" and 5'7", and they also were able to confirm that the police riot gear that they had on was not authentic at all, and that the getup that this person was wearing was most likely purchased either online or from some sort of costume store. Unfortunately, external video footage of the church was not available, and it appears that the outside cameras were just completely non-functional on this morning. 30 minutes after the assailant is first seen on the camera footage, Missy is then seen entering at 4:20 a.m. to prepare for her class. Unbeknownst to her at this time, as she walked into the church, she was actually heading in the exact direction of where this unknown assailant was located within the church. She was seen walking in, preparing for class, and getting ready to set up, and suddenly she seems to be startled, as though she heard something or maybe saw something in the corner of her eye off camera, because she looks in that direction. In that moment, we know she realized that she was not alone in this church like she thought she was. We know that a confrontation took place very shortly after this, but according to police, it actually wasn't caught on camera. But based on the timeline, it can be pieced together that pretty much right after she heard this noise and maybe moved out of the camera frame, everything took place. Having the footage from the church was, of course, an incredible place to start. Police had some sort of profile for this person, knowing the way that they walked, and had potential hope that maybe they could get some DNA from the scene. They at least knew that they had something to work with. But less than a mile away from the church is a store. It's called SWFA, and it appears to be an outdoor kind of sporting goods type of store. And police knew that the cameras on this business could have potentially picked up the assailant either going toward the church or leaving from the church. The road and kind of the area where this is located is pretty deserted. There wouldn't have been many cars passing through the area, especially at this time, at such an early time in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning. So they were hopeful. And when they did get their hands on this camera footage, they actually got more than they were expecting to get. At 2 a.m., just a couple hours before Missy arrived at the church, a driver is seen pulling into the SWFA parking lot, driving a 2010 to 2012 four-door silver Nissan Altima. They pull into the parking lot, turn off their headlights, and then slow down to a crawl. They then turn on their headlights and turn them off again, and then drive around the furthest perimeter of the lot, periodically looking out of their windows to get a good view of the inside of the store. So it was just very weird. Like, they would pull in, turn their lights off, turn them on, drive a bit. It just was very odd. After driving around the perimeter, they then parked and sat in one location for 3 minutes. You could see them moving around a bit inside the car, and shortly after that, they drove away, having been in the parking lot for a total of 4 minutes. Knowing that this driver had the potential to be the same person who attacked Missy in the church, police decided to subpoena Google to check for all cell phone reception picked up around this area on that night. But unfortunately, no activity was picked up, which means that one of two things occurred. Either this person didn't have a phone with them when they were driving around this parking lot, or they had it and no phone calls or texts were sent or received while they were in the vicinity. Clips of the footage were released to the public to see if maybe anyone recognized the car or the way that this mystery person walked. And the people in the town were absolutely shaken with fear. People were calling in tips left and right, and people were calling in to report any person that they thought could even slightly be suspicious. The way that people were on edge was at a higher degree than anyone had ever experienced in this town, because no one had ever seen anything of this magnitude. Over 3,000 tips were sent in to the police from the time that this case began, and with so much interest and national concern for Missy's resolution, many people have kind of formed opinions or created questions about what happened on that night. Because of many well-meaning people who just want to see answers come out of this. Unfortunately, some wires have gotten crossed, and a lack of clarity has kind of started to hover over the facts of what we know. Arrin Stoner is a great resource, as I told you guys, and he has streamlined what we know so far in a series of very well done videos. I would like to talk about some of the things that he's found and give you a chance to tell me what you think of his findings. Be sure to also go on his channel, show him some love after you watch this video, subscribe to his channel, leave a comment on his page. His work is extremely underrated. He's very professional and thorough, and I just want to make sure that he is given full credit for all of the incredible work that he's done. When breaking down the SWFA footage, Arrin was able to see some very key things about this mystery person who was driving the silver Altima. There is a patch that you can see on the camera footage that was located in the upper left chest area of the driver. You can see that the person in the car is wearing all black, and then there's this lighter area on their upper left chest. This would correspond and align with the person walking around in the church who had on the riot gear that said police in their upper left chest corner. They're also very clearly dressed in all black in the SWFA footage, which would match the person walking around the church wearing all black. And these two things combined with the outside motion detectors being activated at the church just 19 minutes after the driver pulled out of the SWFA parking lot has led police to nearly be sure that whoever this driver was that was scoping out SWFA is the same person who killed Missy. There were a couple of times when the driver actually slowed down and looked directly into the cameras on the outside of the building, but if you really look at it, you can see this person's face. Arrin also spent time working with footage to try to make out the license plate of the person driving around SWFA. And he was able to determine that this person had a Texas license plate. And he also determined that the driver had a handicap symbol on their license plate, which is basically just the stick figure in a wheelchair national symbol that we are all familiar with. And need I remind you that the person seen walking around in the church footage was leaning on the walls as they walked through the halls? Need I remind you that this person's right foot was kind of dragging and slapping onto the floor in a way that made them walk a little out of the ordinary? Is it a coincidence that this person who walked with this limp and this gait also has a handicap symbol on their license plate? Probably not. It's very important to dive into what Arrin was able to determine from the surveillance footage inside of the church as well. He was able to make a very key discovery in what he believes could be critical in identifying Missy's killer. This is huge. So he concluded from this picture that the person walking around the church potentially had a right prosthetic leg or ankle. If you look really closely, the ankle is very slim on the right-hand side compared to the left-hand side. And during some clips of the footage, the back of this person's right ankle actually lights up in a reflectory kind of way, as though it were reflecting a portion of the prosthetic limb. We do know that he has sent what he believes to have found on the footage to the Midlothian police. If I'm really honest, what Arrin has put together is very compelling. And if you go take a look at his videos, it is pretty hard to unsee that this person's walk could be caused by a prosthetic limb. It's key because this matching the handicap symbol on the license plate, it just seems like if we were able to make out the full license plate of this driver, we would pretty much have an identification of this person immediately. While appealing to the public, police have encouraged people to come forward if they recognize the walk of this church intruder. The gait is very particular, and while it is difficult to know if the walk is caused from him wearing the heavy gear or if it is caused by a prosthetic limb, the way that they walk is easily identifiable. Some have described the way that this person walks as feminine, and this has led people to believe that maybe the individual is a woman. And I'm not sure where exactly I stand on that. They do kind of have a waddle style of walking, and they are within the average height range of a woman. But from the photos that Arrin has posted, I am more inclined to believe that this is actually a male. Missy's husband thought that the person was a male at one point, but has gone back and forth on thinking that maybe they're a man or maybe they're a woman. And there's just really so much uncertainty surrounding it. But regardless, it's important to remember that people can hide their face or obstruct their face and their physique with clothing, but it is very hard to disguise your walk. The way that each of us walks is ingrained in us, and most people don't even think to disguise their walk when they're on camera the same way they would think to disguise their face. People have been convicted of crimes simply by the way they walk and the way that their feet imprint into the sole of their shoes. It is key. So please look very carefully at the way this person walks and think, especially if you live in the Texas area, of anyone who might drive or may have driven this car and who possibly walks in this way. There have been persons of interest in Missy's case over the years, and a few include Missy's husband, her father-in-law, and a man named Bobby Wayne Henry. Her husband's alibi of being on a fishing trip actually completely checked out, so he was cleared. And people were speculating about allegations of maybe infidelity between Missy and her husband. From what I can tell, there are unsubstantiated claims that cannot be fully confirmed, but people were thinking that maybe her husband was a suspect because of the allegations that Missy was having an affair, or people also explored the possibility of an angry third party maybe having attacked Missy. They are all kind of just theories that people have thrown out there. And her father-in-law was also on a trip at the time with his wife, so he was cleared as well. Bobby Wayne Henry apparently lived in the area, and people called in tips about him. So he was kind of a suspect in the court of public opinion, and police did interview him, and he was cleared as well. Someone else that was a concern to a lot of people was an individual who sent Missy some creepy LinkedIn messages about 3 days before this incident took place. They were questioned by police and cleared as well. Police have requested that the driver of this silver Altima come forward. Whoever they are, they obviously know who they are. You wouldn't forget driving around aimlessly in a parking lot and looking into windows on a random night. So whoever this person is knows that police want to speak with them. There's obviously no way around that. But something that haunts me is that there has to be someone out there who has seen this footage, who has seen the case of Missy, who has seen the Altima and watched how this person walks and thought to themselves, I know them. There is someone out there who has thought, oh my gosh, that's my coworker, that's my long lost uncle, that's a friend that I had from 15 years ago. There is someone who has seen this information and knows who this person is. And perhaps that's the most eerie part. Whether it be a neighbor or your local neighborhood grocery store manager, this person is known by someone. And that's very unsettling, because no one has come forward to actually accurately identify this person. So we have to talk about whether or not people believe this to have been a premeditated crime. There are reasons to believe that maybe Missy was targeted, and there are also reasons to believe that this was completely random. Some things that have people convinced that this was premeditated include the fact that Missy had a very public schedule with her workouts. She always posted when and where her workouts would be. So if someone were to want to hurt her, they could easily just look at her social media. Some people think that maybe because the person arrived just before Missy, that they were planning to break in and then wait for her. And they also had a weapon on them and appeared to be walking around while staging what looked like a fake burglary. So those are some reasons that people say yes. But there are many reasons to say no. There are many reasons to think that maybe this was completely random, that maybe this person only attacked Missy because she showed up at the wrong time. The person literally showed their face on the camera multiple times. They walked around the church right past cameras. They didn't appear to want to disguise their face when they were driving around SWFA. They literally rolled their windows down on their car to look into cameras outside the building. So they weren't making a huge effort to hide who they were. They drove around the SWFA parking lot slowly in a way that cameras would very clearly be able to see their vehicle, and they didn't seem to be too concerned that they would be seen on the camera footage. And if they knew that they were planning to take someone's life shortly after this, they probably would have wanted to hide their vehicle as best as they could. And also, you have to think, why would they plan to attack Missy at a time where she had such a high likelihood of not being alone for long, right? She's getting there to set up for her class only 10 minutes before the first class is supposed to start. So if someone really wanted to attack her, why would they do it at a time where there was such a high likelihood of getting caught? But definitely let me know what you think. I am more inclined to say that this is a male and that this was not premeditated. But it all is just so creepy that I don't know. I don't know what to believe. All I know is that it is terrifying. I'm really hoping that police have information that we don't have. I'm really hoping that they have gotten a lot closer to a resolution that we know about. This case shakes me. Like, I want to look over my shoulder. That is what this case does to me. It is so scary. And let me know if you guys kind of feel the same way. I'm sure many of you have heard about this case before. I have never done research on a case that made me feel so uneasy and uncomfortable. And that is what this case does to me. But I think that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Be sure to let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Also, be aware, if you do have case recommendations for me, I will have a link in the description of where you can now submit case requests. So we are not doing case requests on Instagram or email at this time. I've received some emails that are very graphic. I just do request that no one send me case recommendations via email, simply because I will not open them at this point, just for my own protection. I don't want to open an email or click on a link that is corrupt or look at a picture that is very graphic and is frightening. So just, if you don't mind, please use the case request link in the description box for any further case requests. You know what I'm gonna say. If you made it this far, you are loyal. You really are. And I appreciate you. Yes, I do. I want to thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have an incredible week. I hope that you are doing very well at this time, both physically and mentally, and that you are taking care of yourself. I love every single last one of you guys. You know that each of you mean the world to me, and I am just happy that I could be here another week to sit down and chat with you. Thank you guys so very much again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace.